Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk. Back again with you guys for another episode of what is the Arsenal Transfer Show. Joining you every morning at 8 a.m. UK time. Hope you're doing good. Hope you're doing well. Hope you have a fantastic start to your week. As always, good morning to people joining us live in the chat box today. Let's say good morning. Matt G, good morning to you. To Blackshine, to Steve Stone, James, PJ, Afsar, good morning. Kaiser, Martin, NSW, Dave, Temmie. Good morning to Stephen Akmal, Paul, Kieran, and Louis, and everybody else as well. Of course, joining us in the chat box that I can't take 30 minutes odd to say morning to everybody, but good morning to all of you. I hope you've had a good start to your week, and I hope you're all doing good and well. Do indeed drop a like on the video. Thank you so much for the continued support on the channel. I know I've not been personally in the top form. My voice is still a little bit out there. So thank you so much for kind of sticking with me and still watching the videos and dropping the likes on the videos. I'm hoping that I'm kind of coming out of the tunnel of this kind of bad voice week, if you will. And what a good day to do that on, because today does mark the third anniversary, if you like, of Mikel Arteta taking over at Arsenal. We're going to talk a bit more about that soon. But we're going to kick off with our first story with last night's massive win for Arsenal's under-18s in the FA Youth Cup. Jack Wilshere's side won 6-0 against Millwall in a game in which saw Cozier-Duberry and Ethan Nwaneri both score. And this is important because I want to see these guys scoring. I want to see these guys getting on the score sheet continuously, impressing, doing what they do, because these are two players in particular that I really believe could have a future at Arsenal based upon some of the things we've seen, not just over this mid-season break, but things we've seen for the youth teams before, things that have got them call-ups to the senior sides throughout this season. All of those reasons have led me to believe that both players can have a future at Arsenal if they continue on the path that they are. And having these massive performances like we saw against Millwall last night is very, very important. Some other really great performances in the team as well. Hopefully the highlights will be available to watch very soon. Arsenal target Ibrahima Bamba has been called up for a training camp by Italian head coach Mancini. Arsenal have had a link with the Vittoria player for some time. He's a defensive midfielder, early 20s, and said that he could indeed move on during the January window, according to Fabrizio Romano. Whether Arsenal will indeed move for the player who can represent Italy, we'll have to wait and see. But big congratulations to him after getting called up to work with the senior group ahead of a training camp and ahead, of course, of the next Euro qualification matches. Fabrizio Romano has also claimed that Arsenal are still working on a deal for Mykhaylo Mudryk. Words on any kind of potential agreement are still some way off. News of a potential bid is still some way off. But Arsenal are indeed working on it, trying to come to an agreement with the players' representatives. It's unsurprising that a bid's not gone in yet. Usually what happens is you kind of get to a phase where you plan how much you think the club might be willing to accept. You might go in a little bit lower than that, of course, to get the player for as best of a financial situation as you feasibly can. But what I'm looking for in reporting this story is finally when we get that bit of a breakthrough, like Arsenal have had a bid rejected or a bid submitted or an agreement on personal terms has been made. I don't think personal terms should be too much of a problem, to be honest. The player's always been very, very publicly keen to join Arsenal, so I don't think that's going to be any issue. But what we're kind of looking for here is news specifically relating to a bid going in, and that's ultimately what we want to see happen, hopefully, in the coming days. Youri Tielemans is said to be, or Arsenal are said to be ready to entice Leicester City with a bid for Youri Tielemans. The Belgian midfielder, as we know, has been of interest to Arsenal for some time. But according to Graham Bailey, who has been hit and miss with some things, it's fair to say, over on 90 min. He claims that Arsenal are indeed ready to entice Leicester City with a bid for the player. As I told you in the summer, Arsenal have been very much willing to wait until the summer of next year to get Tielemans on a free. However, with how things are this season, they may want to fast forward those plans. And if they do that, it'll be intriguing to see how much money they go in with. There's been suggestions that it'll be 20 million quid that it'll take for Leicester to sell. Something I have that I just can't get over, the uncomfortable feeling of spending that much money on someone that you could get on a free in the summer. There's something about that that's just too much, but maybe closer to 10 might be worth doing. But even then, it's a lot of money. And is it worth getting the player in for 6 months? I personally think of all the midfielders that we are linked to, I just think that Tielemans is one of those few that can give you an immediate impact in a January transfer window. Well, what I would say is our second headline story of the day, the main transfer headline story of the day, is that Tutor Sports are claiming that Arsenal are still keeping Dusan Vlahovic under very close monitoring. They are indeed looking at the player and the situation at Juventus. And if an opportunity opens up to try and sign the player that they wanted all the way back in January of this year, they might indeed be tempted to go in for him. Now, again, and as I always say with Italian sources outside of Fab, it is very much one to take with a grain of salt. It's not overcommittal. It's not, what's the word? I mean, they're not committing, are they, by saying that Arsenal are keeping under close watch? When I did, do you remember when we used to do the ITK watches on the channel? And I used to give you some tips in terms of how you should kind of break down reports. Things that you want to look out for in reliable reporting are, one, the amount of money that is being claimed, whether or not they're committing to anything. Like if something says like an agreement has been reached, or like the amount of money that's been bid has been rejected, those types of things. You want to see like committed claims. You don't want to see things like under close watch or are in the lead for the player. Like these types of things are very easy to stay, and they've got no comeback. You know, they've got no retrospective criticism, because if a deal doesn't happen, you can just turn around and be like, well, it was under close watch, but I mean, they never got him, like, or they were in the lead for him, but they got overtaken at the last minute. No, you want to see things like how much money they've bid, or how much money has been asked for, or things, you know, these types of things. That's what you want to see. As soon as you see kind of these vague things, that's what we're critical of. It doesn't mean I'm not going to stop talking about them, because it's meaning I'm going to bring it up to you, and then we're going to discuss it, and then we're going to kind of look into it. But yeah, Dusan Vlahovic supposedly being kept under very close watch by Arsenal. Now, the main story of today is that Mikel Arteta celebrates his third year at Arsenal. He was appointed as Arsenal head coach on December 20th, 2019. And since that point has obviously gone on to see Arsenal win an FA Cup and currently sit top of the table with 5 points between themselves and Manchester City. A very impressive tenure that I'm sure that we're going to talk about a lot more in part 2. What I have done is I've left a link down in the description to an article that I wrote about the 3 years of Arteta, kind of my process, if you like, of appreciating these 3 years, of positions on him changing, on the things that he has solved, on the things that he has delivered, and what we might be able to expect in the next 3 years of Arteta's tenure. So make sure you go and give that a read. That is down in the video description. But we're going to move to part 2, your questions and some thoughts on Arteta right after this. Okay, let's jump into the chat box and see what you guys are saying. Sasha says, I'm a Juve player, get me out of here. Maybe what Vlahovic is being linked for. Siege says, after they snubbed us, or after he snubbed us, assume that's Vlahovic, I don't want him. He does not have the desire and motivation to play for Arsenal. Christian says, I'd rather have Mitrovic than Dusan Vlahovic. Sean says, why would they buy him in the summer? And who? Are we talking about Tielemans? Oh, are we talking about Vlahovic? I don't know. I don't know who we're talking about, Sean. We'll have to be more specific. Akmal says, is it really confirmed that he rejected and ignored us? It's more confirmed that like after Arsenal really tried to kind of get in touch with Vlahovic, and you know, there were some points where communications did go through. I went through the agent. He was just never interested in the Arsenal bid. His mind was always focused on a move to Juventus. That's where he wanted to go. That's where he had his heart set on moving to. And so he had, like Manuel Locatelli, just was not interested in the move to Arsenal, because the move to Juventus was just far, far, far more important and more focused for those players than it was a move to Arsenal. Marcus says, Tielemans allegedly, others now interested in him. So is 10 million the max to go in January? At the end of the day, and I kind of always say this, but it's not my money, I'd rather us did not go to 20 odd million quid for a player that we can get for free. But I struggle to I struggle with the whole, like, if we get the player in and he costs us 20 million, and we get Mudryk in and he costs us 60, 70 million, I'm not going to be that fussed, because I'm just going to be happy that we got them at the right time when we needed them. And, hopefully we work better to make better revenue and to sell players for more money, and it will balance the books eventually. That's what I'm more focused on regarding this sort of thing. Where did those 3 years go, says Dave. Indeed, they have absolutely flown by. They have really, really gone so incredibly quickly. I remember doing the show when he first got appointed. I remember listening to the Arscast live show when it was announced halfway through it that Arteta had been appointed head coach. When Unai Emery had been appointed head coach instead of Mikel Arteta. And then, of course, the following year, we then hear that Arteta has been appointed as well to replace Unai Emery. I think the thing about Arteta and the thing about Mikel Arteta's tenure is that to expect us to immediately have improved was never going to happen. To expect something that was going to change overnight was not going to happen. And Arteta, as I write in the article, if you look at the Arsenal team now, his philosophy, his principles, and his standards are stamped all over this Arsenal team. Like the expectation of player behavior, of the expectations of the energy that you need to expend during games, the pressing, the type of football. I remember we were like a year or two in and people were saying that they couldn't see a style of play. Do you know what I mean? Do you remember that? There was a lot of claims that people couldn't see a style of play. Well, you can absolutely see what we're trying to do now. We are fast, we are quick, we're energetic. We love to use the wide areas. We love to try and cut inside, create chances with our striker dropping into the deep areas. We love having kind of this balanced back four, which has got a player that's a little bit more disciplined, like White and Tomiyasu. And then we've got Tierney and Zinchenko on the other side that are much more inverted and like to move forwards. The balance in the side is so well equipped. We like having the 5 attackers, as Clive likes to put it, and the 5 defenders. And, we've now added kind of Granit Xhaka into that 5 attackers. Our left 8 position has been exceptional in really supporting that. And that's been all Arteta's work, changing the way Xhaka plays at Arsenal specifically and unleashing perhaps what we see more at Switzerland in a role that we haven't necessarily seen used that much at Arsenal. The last time it was really used was when Santi Cazorla was here playing alongside Coquelin. And the other 8, like whilst Coquelin sat deep, Santi would get forwards and be more influential. But still, I think Xhaka arguably gets forwards even more than what Santi did when he played in that deeper midfield position. Of course, when Santi was playing at 10 or on the left-hand side, he was far, far, far forward. But I think Xhaka's adopted this position. He's taken what he does really well for Switzerland and elevated that arguably even more at Arsenal this year. And I think Arteta just has managed to find the perfect kind of mesh of players. We're not done. He's not done. He still needs to make better decisions. In-game management needs to improve at times. I think we could make better changes during games. Absolutely. I think that, a manager that's been there 3 years, that is not going to be perfect. To expect a perfect manager after 3 years, no. But what I do think of what I write in the article is that, a lot of us felt that maybe we couldn't afford to have a manager that was learning on the job. I think we can fairly say that we've benefited a lot from Arteta, very much learning his role at Arsenal, and we're seeing the benefits of that faith that we put in him. So there you go. Simon says, hey, remember 10 years ago when Giroud and Martinez were teammates for Arsenal in that crazy game against Reading? Did Mikel Arteta play in that game? 7-5 Reading. Let's have a quick look. Reading 5, Arsenal 7. The lineups were Martinez, Theo Walcott. I suppose he wouldn't have joined Arsenal until... Oh, he did. Did he join in 2012? I feel like he did. Maybe it was earlier. October 2012. I'm sure that he joined that season or that summer. Well, he's not played. Martinez, Koscielny, Theo Walcott, Giroud, Coquelin, Arshavin, Cole Jenkinson, Frimpong, Shamak, Gnabry, Ignacy Mikel, Janine Mead. Wow, that's a name from the past. Thomas Eisfeld. Wow, where is Thomas Eisfeld these days? That is a great name from the past. Where is he? Thomas Eisfeld is a German professional footballer who plays an attacking midfielder for Regionalliga West club Rot-Weiss Essen. Wow. Where on earth are they from? It's a German association football club based in the Essen, North Rhine-Westphalia. The club currently plays in the third division of German football. Thomas Eisfeld hasn't played this season. He played over 100 games for Bochum, which of course is where Jordan Osei-Tutu went on loan. I think has now gone back for 6 years, but at 29 years of age, now playing in the third tier of German football. I remember when we signed him. Didn't we sign him from Dortmund? Yeah, we did. We signed him from Dortmund, and he was kind of really highly thought of at this point. And yeah, nothing really came of Thomas Eisfeld. That's a great shout from the past, though. Let's go to Goldie Backwash. Says, I lost hope in Mikel Arteta once, but glad the club saw what others couldn't. Truly remarkable. A young man can deal with all he has gone through and come out on the other side all the better for it. Again, one of the things that I think we can all agree is that at the end of Arsene Wenger's tenure and at the end of Unai Emery's tenure and partway into Arteta's tenure, the split in the fan base was incredible. You had the outs, you had the ins, you had the AKBs, you had the WOBs, you had labels associated with fans based upon the position of where you were on the manager. And now you've still got your hardcore Arteta outs. Give it to the man, people. They still exist. Not sure why, but they still exist. And but the thing about that is that now that is a tiny, tiny percentage of the overall fan base. I always like to look at the Emirates crowd as a great kind of sample size of kind of what of representing kind of the overall Arsenal fan base. And I know some people say, well, that's not fair because it's just people who can get to the games. But what I'm trying to say is that it's 60,000 Arsenal fans, 60,000 of the most committed Arsenal fans out there. That go to the games, that follow the team up and down the country, all over the world. It's a really good sample size to kind of gauge support is from the people that are in the Emirates Stadium, which do include, of course, people that come in from all around the world as well. And I think we can all agree that the atmosphere in the stadium, the attachment to the club, all of those things is at the absolute pinnacle of what it's been. The Emirates, as I write, used to be something that used to be taken the mick out of for being a bit of a library. Now it's, I think, one of the most intimidating grounds in the league to go to. We haven't lost there all season in the league, and that's going to help us on our way to whatever we end up finishing in this season as well. Paul says, I've read in The Athletic that Rice, Paqueta and Ajed might miss the game as West Ham plan on giving them extended break. Would you have any information on this? I don't, but I will chase it up with our West Ham correspondent a little bit later today, and maybe I'll be able to give you some more information on that tomorrow. Benji says, when everyone was calling for his heads, I was hesitant, mainly due to FOMO, if he went somewhere like Barca. Glad we kept him and he figured it out. Hopefully in 3 more years, we'll be saying the same thing. Yeah, and look, my position certainly wasn't him after Villarreal. That was kind of the point for me. When we lost to Unai Emery in the semi-final of the Europa League, I was like, I don't know what club with ambitions of getting back to the top would keep the coach on at that point, Like what club would have kept Arteta on in that moment contextually if it was somebody else? I think if it was Chelsea, the manager would have gone. If it was United, the manager would have gone. If it was Spurs, the manager probably would have gone. I just felt like the clubs in and around us at that time, if it was the same for them, probably would have got rid. And that's why I think my opinion was affected very much by thinking of it from that position. And I lost sight of what could still be achieved and what still was being achieved. Like, whilst we weren't getting necessarily the results, it's because the job was just not done. The team was not built. The identity was not secured at that point. We hadn't signed the players that we needed, and we'd suffered as well with some frustrating injuries during that period. We had no Aubameyang, of course, for the first leg, or he may have come on late in that first leg. We didn't have Lacazette, I don't think, either. And Smith Rowe played in that false 9 role, which was a bit of a mistake. And Arteta has made mistakes. Let's not be wrong about that. He absolutely has. But I'm so glad that what I didn't do, and what I know a lot of fans also didn't do, even though they had doubts, and like any good disciple, we're allowed to have doubts, that you didn't fall into the trap of just, like abusing him. There's nothing wrong with saying that you think we should have changed the coach. There's nothing wrong with having that view. Everyone's allowed to have an opinion as long as it's respectful. But thank goodness that we didn't abuse a manager. I really would hate to be in a position where now I have to look back with regret, knowing that you regretted some of the things that you've said. I know that when we lost to Villarreal and when we lost to Man City, I did 2 shows on the channel saying that Arteta should be sacked. The word should being the key word, because the word should is all about what I was talking about regarding what other teams would have done, in those moments, what I felt other teams would have done, and that they should have sacked their coaches in the same position. So naturally, I felt the same way about Arsenal. But I don't run a football club. Thank goodness. It's not my job. I'm a fan beyond anything else. I'm a journalist second, a fan first. And I look now at things and I'm a lot more, what's the word? Not cautious. I think I'm more lenient. I think I'm more understanding of the situation now. And I'm very, very happy indeed that we managed. And the club knew better than me to stick with him. Matt said, what is Arteta's best and worst decision so far? For me, the worst decision that he ever made was to play Xhaka at left back against Brighton at home last season. That for me is the worst decision that he made, because when we did that, we left, I think Tavares was on the bench that day, and we left Lokonga completely exposed, playing the number 6 role, and we paid for it. And if we'd have won that game, we would have been the Champions League this season. But, things happen for a reason. I'm very happy to be where we are now. But I think that was the worst decision for me that Arteta made was that playing Xhaka left back against Brighton. Just for me, that was, best decision. I think it has to be convincing Gabriel Jesus to join Arsenal. That for me was a symbol of the step that Arsenal had to take as a club in the market. It was a step from going from players that, convincing players like Thomas Partey to leave a club in the Champions League, really good. That shows the allure, the pull that he had. But we had to take a next step, we had to take the next step in terms of finding the player that was our Alisson, that was our Van Dijk. That's what we had to do. And I think that we have done that in finding Gabriel Jesus. And it sucks that he's injured. It sucks beyond all belief that he's injured. But for me, that is his best decision. It's maybe I say deciding to go after both Man City players, as a whole, because we had to bring in players with the mentality, but not only the mentality, but the players that were the right fit for us. And Zinchenko and Gabriel Jesus kind of fit like a glove into what he wants. So that's the best decision I think he made. And the worst decision, has to be that Xhaka at left back against Brighton for me. That was, that was pretty poor. I really was frustrated by that decision. Diana says, are people understanding the form we have as a club that people are concerned about Jesus? You can put any striker in there and they would thrive. I don't necessarily agree, Diana. I don't think you could put any striker in there and they would thrive. I think you do need to have the characteristics and the understanding and the mentality that Jesus has. And I think you are going to notice a significant drop with Nketiah. But I do think that Nketiah can still work. I do think Nketiah can still get us goals. But to expect the level of performance from our front three with Nketiah in place of Jesus, or any striker really that we could probably sign in January in place of Jesus, you're going to see a drop in the output, a drop in the how smooth it is, how familiar it is. I'm just kind of hoping that the other 10 players that are used to playing week in, week out, that we have available, are going to be able to be more than enough for us to continue to play the brilliant way that we are playing. But I know that Nketiah is trying. I know that he's developing and improving. So hopefully we see that. Fingers crossed. Jay says, hi, Tom. Any news on the contracts with Saka, Martinelli, etc.? I'm getting worried. Arsenal are working on them, and I'm told they're confident of getting them done. Martinelli, I don't think you need to be worried about at all. Saka, you can maybe be a little bit more worried about, but even then, I think Saka will renew. Saliba is the one that, we're all kind of hanging on at the moment. We are hoping to do that. Clive says, Matheus Cunha looks like a Jesus-style forward. Eddie is a different profile. I'm worried, but hanging in there. Clive, I'm not a fan of Matheus Cunha, and take it from someone who, I've watched a fair amount of him now. I'm just not a fan. I'm just not a fan of Matheus Cunha. I think there are so many better options out there. I tell you what, I'd rather recall Balogun than sign Matheus Cunha. I think it would be a mistake. And, if we sign him, I hope he proved me wrong, obviously. But to fill up one of the spots in the squad with Matheus Cunha, when the opportunity to, recall Balogun now, and you can loan him out again in the summer, and you can sign somebody in the summer that's obviously better and better suited and more available, it's a no from me with Matheus Cunha. I'm just not sold on the idea. And yeah, I know it's not working at Atleti, and I know Atleti are a bit of a weird environment for players like Cunha and Joao Felix in particular, but it's a no from me, Clive, on Matheus Cunha. Reggie says, Thomas, only important thing is that Eddie is effective enough for the system to maintain itself. He doesn't need to be a world beater. Consistency is going to be key. And if he can be that kind of in a machine, if you take out one of those cogs and you put in a different one, if the cog's too small, it doesn't hit the ridges. I'm not an engineer, I don't know. So the machine's not going to work. You need to find that cog that fits perfectly, or is, it's of a size that still means the machine can turn, but maybe it's only going to do a job for a certain amount of time until those edges kind of wear down and it finally becomes in a position where it doesn't necessarily work. And maybe that's what Eddie is. Eddie isn't the same as Jesus, but he's a player that's certainly trying to do what he can to emulate a lot more of his characteristics. And that's what I'm hoping that we're going to be able to see in the next 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, however many weeks it's going to be until Jesus comes back. I hope that he can do it. A goal against West Ham would be massive, would be really good. And, in his last however many starts in the Premier League, he's returned a good goal record. So we know he can score. We know he can score against good teams as well, with goals against Chelsea away from home. We know he can get goals. We've just got to hope and keep our fingers crossed that he delivers. And that's going to be the big question around him. Charlie says, I like Enzo Fernandez from Argentina. Shane says Enzo Fernandez would be amazing. Yes, I agree. If you can go out and get someone like that, that'd be great. But Benfica are going to ask for something silly for Enzo Fernandez. I think we all agree they're going to go and try and shoot for something absolutely mad. Christian says, which teams do you consider could claim the top 4? And are there some teams that you fear maybe isn't in the top 6? I always like looking at the Premier League table anyway. It gives me a chance to remind myself where Arsenal sit right now. But I do think Newcastle have got a great chance of getting the top 4 this season. It's going to be interesting how teams react after the World Cup, how players come back after the World Cup. Man City have had loads of players go to the World Cup, but of course Erling Haaland has stayed behind. So that's been a big, big plus for them. They've got Kevin De Bruyne back early as well. So I think they'll probably end up being okay. We've had the least, I think, players go of the teams, of the big 6 teams, besides Newcastle, of course. So I think that we hopefully should be fine, but it'll be intriguing. It's difficult to tell you right now, an answer to your question, Christian, because I kind of want to wait and see other players come back from the World Cup, and that's going to be very, very important. Uriel says, good morning, Tom. Do set pieces coaches work on throw-ins? And why are we so poor at them? Much love. I think it's something that we're improving on. I think that actually, we're trying these long throws in those wide positions. I actually think the long throw is something that Premier League clubs have missed for a long time. You used to see it with Rory Delap, of course, famously for Stoke. To score from a throw-in, the percentages are quite low. But also to score from a throw-in that you do short in the opponent's defensive third, the statistics that come from scoring from those are also very, very small. And I think that Arsenal would have done the analysis on these, and they would have done the analysis on the percentage returns from throw-ins taken in the defensive third short and throw-ins taken when they're trying to throw them into the box from long. I think it creates chaos. I think we've got a physical team. I think we've got players that can get into the box and cause problems. And, our set pieces have been one of the best parts of our game. So why not add another feather to the cap, if you like, and start using these long throw-ins? I think they cause a bit of chaos, and I'm all for them, to be honest. I'm all for them. Clive says, that told me was just saying about the profile. Eddie's profile is more of a scorer than a facilitator. Yeah, I think I've covered that, Clive. I think he absolutely is. But I think he's trying to do things that a facilitator does. And I think, the piece I wrote the other day where I was kind of analysing the two games against Lyon and AC Milan, he was doing those things. Fingers crossed we see him slot in and it's better than what we've really kind of what we're expecting. I think it's probably the best way to put it. Anyway, thank you so much, guys, for tuning in. It's been a genuine pleasure. Thank you again for keeping up with my trailing off voice. I very much appreciate it, as always. I'll be back tomorrow at 8 a.m, of course, with the next show. And of course, tomorrow being Wednesday means it'll be the next Eat, Sleep, Arsenal Repeat podcast. Very much looking forward to be joined by Sophie and Raj and Owen tonight, so we can talk a little bit about ACLs, because we've been experiencing a lot of ACLs and knee injuries and things like that in the men's and women's team, asking them a few questions about those. So do indeed make sure you set your notifications to on, because then you'll be able to know when that drops for you tomorrow. And do drop a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. We've just gone past 41,000 subs. Thank you so much for the continued support. I will see you again very, very soon. Have a great Tuesday. And as always, up the Arsenal. Oh, no, quick, before I go. Massive congratulations to Arsblog on raising over 10,000 euros in support of two fantastic charities. If you bought a mug, thank you so much for buying a mug. You've helped support two fantastic causes. So, yeah, that was my quick thing I just wanted to say before I wrapped up. But thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning in. And as always, up the Arsenal.